let's learn how to hold the violin and place the fingers down. Again, we're going to be very careful to hold it correctly with the left palm against the shoulder of the violin, the thumb on the back, and fingers on the tops. Now we're going to set the violin up, make sure the shoulder rest is flush, no tension, head straight down the violin. Give it 5 seconds with no hands to make sure you're not holding it with your hand at all. Now, the most common thing that people do incorrectly when they're holding their violin is they try to cradle it with their hand. It's really important not to do this. Why? Because we're going to actually need to play up and down the violin, and we're going to need your hand to be free. If you're busy holding the violin up, that's going to make some pretty bad sounds. Okay, so here are the main fundamentals of the left hand. The thumb goes straight up and down with the squishy part, the pad, touching on the side of the neck, just like this. About 1 inch, a little less if you have a smaller violin, about 1 inch from the nut. And it should go directly across from the line you made for the first finger. So the thumb goes straight up and down. But do you notice how my arm is straight? My arm is straight. I have a straight arm. My wrist doesn't bend this way, or sideways. I don't want to ever bend my wrist sideways. I want to keep my arm totally straight like this. Nice and straight and out. With my palm straight as well. I never want to bring the palm up like I'm holding a serving platter. I want to have my arm straight like this. I'm going to set the thumb straight up and down. Now here's the second most commonly missed position on the violin. When we talk about your left hand, the fingers of your left hand from the basal joint, the base joint, the knuckle here, the big joint that connects your finger to your hand, this joint here, right here, the entire finger needs to stay above this fingerboard, which means at no time does any portion of your first finger move below the neck of the violin. So what you need to do is you need to make sure this joint here sits as high as the nut of the violin like this. This is correct, lower is incorrect. If I'm lower, then my arm is on the outside of the violin. My arm always belongs on the inside of the violin. The only part of the arm that gets to be on the outside of the violin is the thumb. The thumb keeps you held on the violin. All of the arm stays on the inside, and all of the fingers stay above the fingerboard. Okay? So I've got to keep the fingers above the fingerboard. Now, we're not going to have our hands straight out like this all the time. We're going to turn it in towards the violin to place the fingers down. So I've got my thumb straight up and down, about 1 inch from the nut. Now, I've got my arm straight and on the inside of the violin, and I've got the index finger basal joint, the base joint, as high as the nut. It looks like this. Do you see how my index finger is back further than my thumb? That's very important. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to curl my finger onto that mark I made on the A string. I'm going to make sure that my finger makes a box. I want to have that finger make a box. I don't want it to be a triangle, because you see, if I have a triangle, part of my finger goes below the fingerboard of the violin. I've got to keep the whole finger above. All the fingers work with the same position.